Hello and welcome back to the Spotlight Games Podcast for episode 139. Today we're talking all about mental health in video games. And because our journeys with mental health never need to be alone, we are joined by all sorts of friends. Joining me as always, my sweet dumpster boy, Cayman Darty. Cayman, how you doing, buddy?
Patrick.
Cayman?
Look, I'm going to I'll come out right out and say it. We're being transparent and open on this episode, right? Guess what, guys? Super depressed in the dumpster boy household.
Aww.
And that's totally okay
good.
because we're here to talk about it today. And we're here to talk about how video games make it a little bit better, huh? Look at that.
Ain't that just the way? Also joining us from the JK Games Podcast, Kayla. Kayla, welcome back to the show. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm fueling myself as we speak. No brand for free, but
I mean, sponsor us, you cowards, but
also, you're not right now. So here we are. No, I'm doing great. I would say I'm feeling pretty good lately. Brain happy for the
brain
most
happy.
Part.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that.
I'm glad to be here.
Well, we're glad you're here. Rounding out our quartet, the sweet Jordan, aka Cognitive Clips. Jordan, how you doing, buddy?
Doing pretty good. I know I dropped this in the Instagram chat today, but a little antsy. To be like kind of spearheading this kind of thing for the first time, because the joke always being that I'm the I'm always the guest and never the host for anything, but these kind folks have generously allowed me to shape the episode here a little bit. So
that all changes today.
Yeah.
We got a lot of video game stuff to talk about because this is the Spotlight Games Podcast, where each week we spotlight the latest and the greatest in the world of video games. You can get it by subscribing to our YouTube channel at Spotlight Games Pod, or by searching for Spotlight Games in your favorite podcast app. And hey, you can be on the show by tuning in as we record live Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time right here on twitch.tv/Spotlight Games Pod. So be sure to follow us there so that you're notified when we go live, so you can be part of the conversation. The Spooklight streams are in full force this month. So far, we've streamed Little Nightmares and Silent Hill 2. And this week, we're streaming I think probably a little-known game by the name of Ghost Town Pumpkin Festival. This is a game that...
Did Kayla develop that one?
She might have.
I actually have never heard of it, so I'm very excited to see you stream it.
Well, it's a cozy little spooky game where we're going to be running around this pumpkin festival, carving pumpkins. We all get to dress up as ghosts, and we can create a little ghost character. And there is an opportunity, if you're interested and have a PC, because it is a PC only game, to play with us too, because it's like an open forum type game. So if you're interested in that, go follow us on socials. I'm going to talk about it tomorrow, leading into Thursday stream, but that's going to be Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on twitch.tv/SpotlightGamesPod. And finally, join the Discord. We got a fun little Discord where we discuss what we're playing and generally goof off together about video games. So if that sounds like something you'd like, click the link in the description or find it in the bio of our socials to join the Discord. Normally, we goofing. Normally, we talk about what we've been playing to start the episode, but this is just a conversational topic today. We're not going to necessarily talk about what we've been playing. If for some reason, folks, the podcast lasts like 10 minutes because we get everything out that we want to say, we can talk about what we played at the end of the show. But something tells me this quartet and this topic, we're going to be talking for a good long while about mental health and video games. And so, Jordan, I now hand you the reins. What are we talking about today, brother?
Let me just take those from you real quick. Yeah. Ooh, it flipped the script. Wow, that's fancy.
Wow, the hot seat.
The hot seat, I love it. Yeah, so the timing of the episode, like why it kind of came to me for early to mid-October, is because if you're not already aware, October 10th is World Mental Health Day, worldwide, as the name would imply. So it seemed like a good thing to talk about, and as we've all kind of hinted at, it's something that I personally deal with in my everyday life, mental health, and everybody that's present here, and Jericho as well. God rest her soul for not being able to rest.
Oh no!
No, she's just getting some rest, is what I mean. She just
yeah.
Lord help her to get the rest that she needs.
Sure.
Yes.
But no, and everyone present. One of the reasons why I've enjoyed your all's company so much and your all's content so much is that you aren't afraid to touch on the topics of mental health and make known that you are, either just kind of dealing with it yourself sometimes or just advocating for it. So I figured, why not just bring us all together and have a chat, chat about that. So for me personally, it's been a little over 9 years since starting therapy for depression and some anxiety as well. And gaming has always been a coping strategy, if you want to use the therapy terms for it. If you don't want to use, love it.
Free therapy.
That's right. That's what we're here for. And also just, it's a hobby anyway. It has been from all life. So it's been cool to see how games have helped me through those rough patches, but also, especially in the past decade, how games have actually started to reflect those everyday struggles for some people more accurately and more often. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about tonight. And obviously you don't have to have any sort of diagnosis to have a bad day or a bad week or, a bad month, bad life. I don't know. Sure. I don't know your life, but so I think it may be easier to maybe start there for all of us tonight and then work toward more focused stuff. So, Cayman, I hear you saying earlier that you're going through it a little bit. So why don't you kick us off, man? First thing I want to talk about is just what are some comfort games for us? What are some comfort games that if you are in a rough patch or just otherwise just having a rough day, like what's a game you can almost 99% guaranteed you can turn to it and just enjoy a little bit of something to get your mind off stuff? What's that? God. What are some examples for you, Cayman?
That's a great question. I think maybe it's probably good to kind of address the mental health event. That didn't land. That joke didn't land. That joke didn't land, guys.
That was good.
We need to go back. Can we bring it back?
Bring it back in the chat.
I don't think I. You know what? We're just gonna skip past that. Let's just cut here. Someone just edit this part out. Okay. Edit this part out. So to kind of address the elephant in the room, and not to like go completely off topic on this, but
no,
it's something we've kind of mentioned in passing on the show, and Patrick and I both, oddly enough, I think in our adult years, like kind of come, our paths have intersected in terms of like our own health. So still no actual diagnosis, but so I think Patrick can correct me if I'm wrong now. We've been doing this for a year now. I'm like partially paralyzed on my right side, like full right side. You can't really tell a lot face wise, but there's times where you can see like just it'll start slooping down. I have like limited function in my right arm and almost no function all left in my right leg. And when you see us on camera, we're Patrick and I specifically, we're joking all the time. We're cracking off and, we're having a good time. The reality is living a life like that sucks.
Yeah.
Like it's hard. And I know Patrick can relate, he has, ankylosing spondylitis. That fucking
Close.
nailed it. Fuck.
Close. Ankylosing spondylitis.
Yeah. Okay. Come on, man. That's a
really
long
that's what I said.
word.
I led with you were close.
Did you've had that? Look, you've had
really
it for your whole life. So, like I said, like our paths have kind of intersected, and I've been lucky to have Patrick to be able to kind of like not feed off of, but like bounce off like my own physical frustrations that I'm going through in my life with someone who's been through things on his and has kind of like worked through that too. And so it's been 100%. Nice. And so, but the thing is, the truth at the end of the day is that in this particular situation, playing video games isn't easy anymore. And it used to be. So when I'm going in like comfort mode and things like that, like it's playing games that like maybe I used to play, like things like even things that are reflex sensitive, like first person shooters and stuff like Bulletstorm. But like even games like Bulletstorm is like those are difficult. So like for me now, a lot of it's like some of my comfort games are going and playing, like replaying things like Persona 4. Turn-based RPG, something that's not physically taxing. And you could say like, okay, well, even just like, your hand, but like after a while, like my hands hurt, my arm hurts just from sitting and holding a controller. So something that's turn-based, something that's a little bit slower, is actually a lot easier on me. And it's something I never really thought that would like end up being there. So things like Ni no Kuni is another great example. Like games that are like, it's maybe not cozy game, and there's some that game's hard as shit, guys. I don't know if you've replayed it.
I can't beat it, dude. Like I can't.
Ni no Kuni's hard as shit.
Yeah.
But I think the one game that I'm like, this is like the ultimate cozy game for me, and this specifically is the depression side, I think, is Katamari Damacy. I know we talk about it all the time, but there's something about, and people with depression, I think, can relate to this a lot, and anxiety too, because I have really bad anxiety, is like, there's something about the control, like having the ability to put order to chaos. And if you've ever played Katamari Damacy, like the game is just pure chaos.
I love it so
much. But part of the shtick is that you are collecting and you're rolling up this massive ball collecting items. So in a sense, like you have control of that chaos and you use that chaos to yours. So in a way, for me, like when I'm kind of going through kind of the motions in my own life of like today, for instance, I don't know if you guys know this, but neurologists apparently few and far between, and getting appointments can be months out. And you're in situations like this and you're like, oh, I'm going to have to wait 4 to 6 months to get in to a doctor that needs to look at my brain. And until I can see them, this is never going away. Like, can be tough. And so like that stress and that anxiety, that lack of control in your life, having a game like Katamari Damacy for me gives me a little bit of control back in a world in which I have no control. And so I love that. I think it's like, for me personally, like that's the game for me. Like that's one of those, and it's been since I've been young, like since like middle school, that I always seem to fall back on. And the fact that they just keep re-releasing it every single console gets a re-release, totally fine with it. This is the one time that I'm like, you can release it literally on everything. Doesn't matter.
The new version just come out like
absolutely.
Yes, it did.
We love Katamari. We love Katamari. Right. And that's so like, fuck yeah. So like, just keep re-releasing the same Katamari. I don't give a shit. Because at the end of the day, it's the same concept.
Yeah, I didn't know that Katamari was headlined by Todd Howard. That's interesting.
Right, you won't assume you're gonna play it on your smart fridge soon enough. You're just gonna have your hands up, like massaging your smart fridge.
Jokes on you! I already do that anyway without a game.
I love that.
So, Kayla, when you're massaging your smart fridge, what kind of apps do you turn to?
I love that. I really love that analogy. No, first of all, like I in the same way, and I didn't really realize it came in until you were talking about it, like making the connection between like feeling the lack of control, but being able to do it through gaming, and even in like a subconscious way. Like I really love like my go-to comfort game is like a strategy, like a resource management type game, where I can kind of like click the button and let it do the work, and then just kind of sit back and like watch all the things move. And like, quick backstory on me, I also have struggled with anxiety my whole life. Like it's been like a constant state of like fight or flight that I've been stuck in for 27 years. So that's cool.
Love that for you.
Yeah. But seriously, like the way that I find solace and like relief and escapism is definitely gaming, and reading is also like something I'm passionate about. It's really the only time where I feel like I can totally like disconnect my brain and like be completely like separate from my own like chaos internally. Sometimes that looks like playing chaotic games though. Like I think for me, even like first person shooters are also something I'm really into, especially like playing with friends and playing by myself is something that I really like to do when I'm having a tough time. That community, even though like I might be feeling too anxious to like go out and like do something physically with my friends, like that might be too overwhelming for me. Being able to do it in like a virtual space is really helpful, and like having like the common goal of like we're gonna play this game together and not necessarily have to worry about creating dialogue with each other and like banter and that sort of thing, but just like still being together is something that's really cool. I think also like I have recently in the past 2 years been diagnosed with ADHD as well, and that's been really tough for me because it's something that like I can look back and see the signs that I presented throughout my whole life, but it is a lot different presenting in women than it is in men. And so especially when you're younger, a lot of mine is like internalized. It's very much like my repetitious like thought patterns and like my nonstop like brain, and less like a hyperactive on the outside, like presenting like, oh, she can't sit still. It's less like that. My brain can't sit still, people. That's what's going on. That's just a little bit of like my backstory, and like it's something that I'm really passionate about. I have unfortunately I've lost people that have struggled with mental illness on like a pretty severe level. It's something that I'm really passionate about talking about. And so I'm glad that I'm able to be here and discuss it as well. I do realize we also forgot to throw up a little content warning, but I'm not talking about anything like in depth. I don't think any of us are going crazy. But so yeah, for me, I would say one game that I've always loved like playing and just like going crazy. I like to put music in sometimes also, like when I'm playing, like Apex is something that I really like. Fortnite is something silly I've been really enjoying lately. Specifically Lego Fortnite is very calming to me. Like the more like Minecraft style, like
I've not played
creative. Yeah. And then Stardew Valley is another one that's like it'll forever have my heart. I just so many hours. It's so much fun. And then one game that I'm sure we'll talk about, I think we're talking about this more later, but like The Last of Us, I can't go to the podcast without talking about The Last of Us. Like, and you would think like, oh my gosh, that's so depressing and like a very sad game, but like it made me feel very like, I don't know if like scene's the right word. I haven't been through an apocalypse and had that kind of stuff happen to me. Well, I guess technically we have actually. But yeah, I hope that makes sense. But yeah, that's also like one of my favorite games of all time. So like when I played it, I was like, wow, like this is what gaming can really represent, that type of emotion.
Yeah.
And that I think is really powerful. Like no matter what it looks like even if it's not necessarily like overtly like about mental health, I think like seeing powerful emotions in characters in games and like how that affects you as the player and like the game itself is very cool. So,
right.
Yeah.
So I just to kind of interject quickly about The Last of Us. I'm currently doing a Last of Us playthrough for my 100th platinum, and I'm doing part 1, like the remake. And I bawled my fucking eyes out during the Henry Sam portion, which if you haven't, there's no spoilers anymore. Like if you haven't either watched the TV show or played it at this point, there's 3 versions of Last of Us Part 1.
Yeah,
there's no way you haven't played it at this point.
Yeah.
You haven't, you're a loser. I'm just kidding.
Get off the street.
It was one of those. It's one of those games you play through. You're just like, this fucking sucks. But it sucks in a way that's like, it's like when you listen to sad music when you're sad, where it's like it
cathartic.
Helps you through that cathartic. Yes, it is. I think The Last of Us story is cathartic in a way that like helps you process that watching it. I see where you're going with it.
Yeah, thank you.
I was lurking on Maury's stream whenever he was at that part, and just his disbelief.
Yeah,
I was like, yeah, dude, this is not. This is why I can't even make myself watch the show.
Sure.
Yeah,
I can't make myself play the second game.
It's so funny though how that works, because like for me, Last of Us is a game that I wanted to talk about in my
please go ahead.
Dude,
I was gonna kick it to you. So.
But it's silly when you think about it at a glance, right? Because both games are just hyper violent. Like the subject matter is just so dire and awful, but I feel like the more I've kind of thought about it in this context, because at first I was writing down games of like, what are my comfort games? And I wrote down The Last of Us, not first, let the record reflect. I'll get to that. But then I was like, but this sounds kind of silly that The Last of Us would be a comfort game because of, the subject matter and all those things. But then the more I thought about it, Cayman kind of alluded to, and I've mentioned on the podcast in some capacities before. But yeah, since I was 13, I've had a degenerative form of arthritis called ankylosing spondylitis, which, for those of you that don't know, if you don't feel like Googling, it affects your spondyloarthropathic joints. It's like mostly your spine, your hips, your pelvis, that kind of area of your body. And the idea is over time, those bones will fuse together and create like a giant Pangea bone. And it like the fusing process is very painful, and it can limit mobility and all these kinds of things. And then on top of that, I have another form of arthritis that affects like everything else. So it's like the other joints are affected by a different kind of arthritis. But in a way, I feel like, and like I said, this is not something that I've ever kind of contextualized in my brain before, but a game like The Last of Us to me is kind of like an analogy of my life in a way, where like it's always, and I think I'm willing to bet that this will ring true for everybody on this call, or on this podcast rather, of this just like force that is always trying to beat you down and like always trying to hold you back and always trying to you know, take the wind out of your sails, that you have, and like what Kano was saying, that you have absolutely no control over. Like it's a thing that every day we wake up. For me, it's mostly physical, which, you know, some of it bleeds into the mental, but it's something that, you know, every time I go out, or I, you know, even just I wake up, I deal with it. So it's, yeah, I feel like there are like analogies or kind of connections with certain types of games that I've never really thought about before this kind of thought exercise. And I think there's a comfort in that for me, because in the game I win, right? Like in the game, whether it's, you know, the museum in the first game with the clickers, like whether I sneak through or whether I fucking blow their brains out, at the end of that segment, I win and I beat the thing. And so I feel like there's like a comfort in that, like, even though what all of us deal with in our own way doesn't have a cure or doesn't have like a silver bullet to, you know, defeat, there is comfort being in a situation where you get to win, because the you know, the dark reality, and I don't mean it that way, but like none of us will ever necessarily win against our diseases, because they're not going anywhere, right? So I think that for me, in a way, I find comfort in that. And I feel like, because so many times when I talk about how often I play this game and how often I have played these games, and then like Jordan, how you're like, I can't play the second game. It's funny how like our brains are just wired so differently that I find joy in this such a dark experience for, you know, my own reasons.
But you're not, see, the thing is like, I feel like there's something to that though. Like, so like for instance, when I was growing up, I was a little baby back bitch, absolutely terrified of everything. Like, I'm talking scared of everything. Don't get me wrong, I'm still scared of everything.
Yeah.
And that's what I realize now as an adult. It's just my anxiety that makes me scared of everything. But part of growing up, which is very funny about this, is like part of growing up was to get over that hump in my life. I just like had to like forced it, right? Like, well, I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna watch every scary movie. I'm gonna do all the things that scare me, I'm gonna do all of them. And so it's like something like The Last of Us. I think there is a catharsis there, because it's like us being like, I'm in a position in which like these dark things that are happening, like I'm facing these realities, and like we are at the end, whether you're watching a movie or whether you're playing a video game or whatnot, you're at the end, you are still victor, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's the darkest movie ever and everyone dies at the end, or in a situation where you're playing a game and something goes wrong, like when the credits roll, you're still there. You're still kicking. You're still doing it. So like, there makes sense, right? Like we fight, you know, we can fight our own demons through things like this, through other mediums. And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And hey, we are all here tonight, which means that we are winning.
That is true.
You know, we've won so far.
So far. Tony Thomas in the
like,
chat really quickly says there's a great catharsis in beating to death something that scares you. You're not wrong, Tony.
Me.
Sorry, Caleb. What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, I think I wish I could scoop my brain out and throw it on the ground and just beat it with a hammer.
Sure.
In the most loving way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I think that like I think that you're so right. But if you guys like I think it forces you to be also very introspective and like think past like just what you're seeing on the screen, because like so much. I don't want this to be just the Last of Us podcast, but we all love it. We'll move on. But with that being said, though, like I think I think anything that makes you like think deeper and think like maybe from a perspective that you wouldn't have already thought from, like being forced into that, especially like having to play as the antagonist. Spoiler. Like I think that is, or antagonist, is it the antagonist? Who knows? Like, I mean, both of them are. So I think like anything that puts you in that perspective where you have to think differently is also like very interesting from a mental standpoint.
Yeah.
A psychological standpoint.
For sure. Couple shout outs, and then I want to mention one other game, but then let's kick it back to you, Jordan, because I want to hear what your choices are. But Aravi and Tony Thomas in the chat gifting out subs.
Aw.
Thanks, y'all. Aravi gifted a sub to Tony, and then Tony paid it forward and gifted our very own the Dumpster Boy STC with a
Wow.
to the channel. So
Love
thanks,
to
y'all.
see it.
But a hype
love
train
it.
has started. So anyone else out there that wants to add to the hype train, any sub goes a long way in supporting the channel. We thank you for that. Other one for me, when I don't want to think at all, I don't want to confront anything. Fucking Mario Kart, dude. Like,
Bro.
Actually,
the music, the lights, it being something that I've played since I was like 7 or whatever. I have found as I get older, I really love nostalgia and I really love playing games from my childhood. And there's probably, to therapize myself, there's probably something there of like going back to a time where I didn't have a disability. But I find a lot of comfort in those kinds of games too. But Jordan, what about you? Where are you finding comfort these days?
Yeah, one of the biggest things for me. So I like how you guys were putting into the perspective of trying to control the chaos and things like that. One of the things that I really turned to for quite a while was Breath of the Wild. And it was almost like the opposite, where if I was like in the middle of a depressive episode, and or the anxiety was kicking me or whatever, then like I would jump into Breath of the Wild and like everything disappears. Like you're just in this like wide open, beautiful little world with a little minimalist music and, just seeing some, painterly sunset or whatever, like, and you just get lost. And like, so that was one for a while, and other games that were like that as well. So obviously Tears of the Kingdom would be another example.
Sure.
I think for a while there was also some No Man's Sky, just like jump in and just go do a thing. But like there's nothing that's necessarily hounding you constantly. You can just like explore around and just like, tunnel vision, everything else faded away for a bit kind of thing. So and not quite gaming related, but I did I looked up this GIF like a long time ago, just as like my own little visual. Cause as you were saying, like some days it does feel like you're just waking up and it's just like trying to beat you down or, take the wind out of your sails. And like, so stick with me. The visual from Daredevil season 1, episode 2, where he's like in that hallway trying to rescue that kid.
Oh yeah. Great.
Toward the end. Fantastic scene. And like, he's like getting the crap kicked out of him, and he like gets hit. You just see him kind of like just like rears back and just keeps going at him. Like that's how it feels some days. You gotta be Daredevil. Like it's the Russians are just kicking you, but you gotta save that little boy.
Those pesky Russians, man. The boy needs saving. That's the thing.
I'm the boy. Save me, Daredevil.
Yeah,
but also sometimes we're the Russian too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Sometimes we're the ones beating ourselves down.
I need to think on that for a bit. That was good.
Thanks.
That was cute.
Something else, I think. I'm sorry, Jordan. Do you have any other games you want to talk about?
Not really. Like just along the same lines. I know, especially pandemic times was ACNH, little Animal Crossing New Horizons.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
The world is crumbling, but I have a cherry tree in my yard, so that's something.
But the bees are attacking me.
Not the bees.
Here's a question for y'all before we go to our next topic.
Yeah.
Do you guys feel like now that we're all making content about video games, that has intrinsically changed the way you play games, and in some ways in a negative way? Like for me, what I mean by that is like Cayman joked a few weeks ago on the podcast, it might have been last week actually, about how few games I finished this year. And it's partially because of the podcast. We're like, earlier today, I was playing more Silent Hill 2, which I'll share more thoughts on next week. And I'm just like, I'm trying to like this game more than I'm liking it because I want to be able to talk about it on the podcast. And then I have this moment of like, why am I playing this right now? Like, I'm not having a good time. There's other games that I could be playing that I want to be playing, but there's this like feeling that for the podcast or for the content, like to do more of the thing. Do y'all have that feeling in this space?
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
That's a
From
fucking
time to time.
absolutely.
Yep.
It's we were sitting there the other day. I was talking to my wife, and I was like, I'm doing platinum run for The Last of Us. I'm also working on a dumpster dive game called Indivisible. But then there's also Silent Hill 2, Dragon Ball Z Sparking Zero, as well as Metaphor Refantasio. Okay. And I'm like sitting here thinking, I'm like, there's no way that I'm going to be able to touch all of these games while doing everything else. At the same time, I'm also like, well, once I'm done with The Last of Us Part 1, it just feels logical to go and platinum Last of Us Part 2 because I haven't done that yet, like immediately after.
Mm-hmm.
But I still have 3 huge games, and that's not it. There's more on the way.
Well, wait, there's more.
Right.
And there's ones that we've all missed.
And so
already.
I do feel like at a certain point, like I do a disservice. And I think a lot of this kind of feeds into this anxiety that I have about what we do. And it reminds me of, and I know we'll probably get to a point where there'll be a question about like what game we resonate with, but it reminds me of Compton from Psychonauts 2.
Oh yeah.
This
Ooh,
like
that was on my
the
list.
Compton's cook-off, that level was like, I think it hit me the hardest playing through that level of being like, this really feels like what we do every week, right?
Yeah.
Because not only are we getting up here on a stage or a platform and we're putting ourselves out there, but like at the same time, like we also are constantly grading ourselves. And I tell Patrick this all the time where I'm like, constantly feel like I'm grading myself. Like I have to do more, but I have so little time to do it in.
Mm-hmm.
And where do you put that time towards? And I have this like deep rooted anxiety every episode that like, am I talking about games people actually want to hear about? Am I doing it in an expedited manner in which I can give a thorough enough review to assist someone in the audience who might be on the fence of where am I going to put my money towards this particular thing? And man, that like trying to grade that and like be okay with it is just like, I don't think I'll ever be able to like conquer that beast.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we're
It's
just
a lot.
constantly fighting it, just being like, well, of course I want to provide reviews. As the resident Dragon Ball Z guy, I do feel obligated to give a review for Sparking Zero, but the way my body works, especially right now, like we discussed, like those types of games are really hard on me.
Yeah.
Whereas something like Metaphor Refantasio, I can pretty much, from my understanding, play the entire game as a turn-based. Like even the easiest battles I can do turn-based. I don't have to do the action part. I can do it all like that. And I'm like, okay, like that feels great because I can do that. I can put that in the portal and I can like do that if I'm having a really bad day and I need to be in bed most days. And there's days like that where I can't leave the bed. That like I can just play on my portal. But like, how the fuck do you play something like Dragon Ball Z that is so reflex intensive, like on a portal? You know,
I've seen
or
like just a couple of clips of that game, and it is like I can barely keep up with what's happening. Like it is so fast.
Yeah. I feel like that game, watching a clip of that game gave me ADHD. Like there's so much was happening in that game.
right.
Like, God damn.
Conspiracy pod.
Yeah.
Here we are.
It's
Yeah.
true. So then yeah, man, like that kind of like weighs on you, and then you get done with an episode and you're like, shit, like for example, I had a situation happen the other day where I was like, I have to try to squeeze in some new experience. So I like went out and it ended up being fine because I got like a dumpster dive review out of it and we were able to do a little bit about it. But like I had to like pull something that morning to try to complete by the time we recorded so that I didn't come back and say, hey, I'm 3 episodes deep playing the same fucking game.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because no one wants to hear about it 2 weeks in a row, much less 3. Like, hey, man, how is this 100-hour experience going? Man, it's fucking going.
Hey, that's gonna be all with me and Dragon Age next month. Oh, what are we
Lord.
playing? Still Dragon Age.
Well, good news
Yeah.
is you got a portal on the way, hopefully.
That's
so like you'll
true.
be good.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Be right here, right
Yeah.
before my birthday in November.
I completely relate to that experience, Cayman, because I don't know if you guys know this, but my co-host Jerica, she is great at finishing games, and I'm not. Like because I don't mean to blame everything on my ADHD, but because of that, I have a really hard time like centralizing on like one thing.
Yeah.
Like it's very hard for me to like sink a lot of my time into one game. Like I'll be thinking about actually there's this game that I just saw in the Steam library that I need to download and that I want to play. And so then I need like I really crave like that instant like gratification of like some
Right.
seeking serotonin somewhere else. But what I've like I just know that like it's all internal. Like I try to remind myself like the way that I'm feeling that people will react is not rooted in reality. Like nobody has told me that they're upset with me because I'm talking about the same thing over and over again, or like
Right.
I'm talking about fucking farm games again. Nobody cares. They actually kind of like that. Surprising. I don't know why.
DTF's in the chat.
Yeah, DTF in the
DTF.
chat. Me too. But yeah, like I think what helps me personally is like I just remind myself that like it is my own brain that's like doing this to me, and like nobody else is saying this to me except like the mean person inside of my brain.
Mhm.
You know,
And-
that negative self-talk loop is brutal.
It's hard. It's really
Brutal.
tough. Like, and I know somebody else, I think it was Cayman that mentioned this, like Psychonauts, I think is a perfect game like for this because it doesn't take itself super seriously, but it is also very serious at the same time. Like it's super quirky, it's super fun, but it has a lot of like really heavy stuff and like really important topics that it discusses in like a fun way.
Mhm.
I don't know where I was going with this.
God, that game is so
good. I experienced the same thing for sure, especially when I'm like, yeah, I'm still playing this game.
Right.
Yeah, and I promise that I'm not trying to get a laugh, not trying to make anybody have the worst day on their podcast. That is what happened for me with Spider-Man 2 last year, where
Oh, sure.
literally like in the months leading up to it, I had told myself like, no, like I really enjoyed the first game. I'm a lifelong Spider-Man fan, like just from the comics and the animated shows and whatever else and the movies and all of it. But like I didn't jump out and get the first game right away, but still played it later and adored it. So I'll probably do that too. Like I'll wait for like a Black Friday sale or something. But then I was like, but the SEO, I gotta get it now so I can get I can get some time into it and I can get an essay on blah blah blah. And like, you know, it worked out fine. Like I enjoyed the game and everything, but like it still felt kind of dumb.
Yeah.
And I remember kicking myself and having to have like a chat with my wife because like she was kind of like, bro, like what's she doesn't call me bro, but she was just like, because I also had this idea in my head of, you know, since I've streamed like 5 times before now, guaranteed I'm going to stream a new game and the chat's going to be popping. There's going to be like a dozen people in there, maybe even like 100, and we're all be talking
Yuri
about
Lowenthal
Spider-Man.
himself is going to be in the chat.
He's going to come say hello. And guess what didn't happen? You know, I like set myself up for that disappointment. And like, I mean, I really was like, I like straight up went to like a mini depressive episode after that. Just like, man, I really wanted that to be like, I thought that was be so cool that like this didn't happen. And she was like, I don't want you to like, I want you to have fun with this. I don't want this to like affect you.
Yeah.
Like that so badly. And I had to like really kind of readjust my, you know, mindset about the content creating. And it's an ongoing process. I mean, you know, as Cayman will attest to, like every other month, I'm like, man, I'm kind of bummed about this, or like I really think I should put this idea out there, but I don't know. Is really gonna do people care? And he's just like, bro, do it, just do it,
dude. Sometimes
Good for you.
sometimes all you need is just one of your buds to come up and just kick you right in the nuts.
right?
So you just
And
need
the
to like
Mars,
realign yourself, you know.
Mhm.
I mean, like the truth is, at the end of the day, I think we all we all face similar things, and when you're in a position like we are, where you know we're putting out content, it seems like for those like especially like I think before I and Patrick, like before we kicked off Spotlight Games, like I never really understood the concept of like why would anyone be really worried about that. The truth is, when you put yourself out there like we do like this, it's like if you don't feel like you're seeing immediate results, you feel like you're failing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then you go back, and especially when you're dealing with like all this stuff, you're like, you go back and you're like, okay, well, do they just not like me? Am I just not good enough? Like, what am you know? And then instead of pinpointing like the constructive side of like how to be better, we like we just turn to destructive criticisms for ourselves.
Mhm.
And it's something like we got in the works and like upcoming stuff that we want to do. And, I've been saying for the last year, like we always end the episodes like, yeah, eventually STC is going to come back. We're going to bring Save Trash Cinema back and it'll be part of the rotation again with Spotlight. And like, we've got a year now on hiatus. And every week I tell myself like, we're one step closer. But the truth is I mentally deep down inside, I'm like, you're not ready, because if you do come back, no one's going to listen because you've been gone for so long. And did anyone really listen in the first place? I mean, you talked about movies like Sorority Babes and the Slime Ball Bowl-O-Rama. You were literally the only person who likes that movie, Gaiman. And there's moments like that where you do second guess yourself. But I love the fact that we have such a great community here.
Yes.
Both that are in the chat, every Tuesday night with us, or hanging out in Discord, or just the people on screen with us right now that like really do. We uplift each other. And I think it's a certain level of accountability that we have as colleagues or as peers or as friends, to hold each other accountable to not let each other fall. And like, I think we all have to try, and this is, goes, I think, even farther outside of just this podcast, but like we are the push-up brawl in each other's lives.
Whoa.
We're here to support each other.
Whoa.
Lift.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
These puppies have needed to be pushed up for years.
Say, look, I got you, buddy.
They're sad, brother.
I'm here to just cup them and just hold them up for you.
A lot of people have been calling me Swag Daddy. Really, it's the Sag Daddy. You know what I'm saying?
Sometimes.
Sad daddy.
Let's go.
Sometimes it's sad daddy.
Yep.
That's
it. Sad daddy, sag daddy.
Yeah.
Depresso daddy.
There you go. This is as good a time as any to drop that. I had a blog for a while, and
a blog.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. About like my mental health journey and some of that. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was the antidepressant dad.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Is that your name? Oh my gosh, I love that.
It's pretty fucking good, dude.
And like I haven't.
Really
thank you. And
that is the most Midwest emo band name I've ever heard.
It actually is, yeah.
Here for it.
Yeah, and like I haven't been active with it in a long time, but I also can't bring myself to like, delete the WordPress URL or whatever, because it's like, that's almost like pseudo journalistic, but also like with in case anyone doesn't know this, all of these kind of things we're talking about with mental and physical health. I mean, it's all, not only is it all tied together, like they can impact each other. But man, depression does some weird stuff to your brain. Like it'll even impact stuff that like wasn't involved, like that happened before I was diagnosed, before I like really kind of hit that point. Where one of my good buddies be like, "Oh yeah, remember that thing with that, back when we were in college in this class together?" I'm like, I believe you. I'm coming up blank. I have no idea what you're talking about. But like, if I ever do want to look back and like remind myself of something, like a timeline of events that I can't quite grasp myself at this point in time, I can like scroll back through the old the old blog and say like, okay, so I was talking about this in this point in time, and then blah blah. So that's there. Yeah. So
in all seriousness, like journaling, like and to me, like the media creation side of it all, like even just like in a podcast format, feels like the same to me as like almost like journaling, like getting your thoughts out, like having like an outlet of sorts is like really helpful for me, like personally. So I get it for sure. I didn't have a blog, but if I did, I would hope that the name was as good as yours. Truly amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, we had mentioned before about representation within games and stuff. So we'll go ahead and shift to that now. And I guess I'll just go ahead and say my piece now, because it does kind of dovetail from my comfort games, because I actually did a video essay about this last year where kind of looking at games that weren't necessarily about mental health overtly, or at least not like for the entirety of the game, because you look up any top 10 list, you're going to see games like Celeste, you're going to see Night in the Woods, you're going to see like which are all both fantastic examples. Grease, another good example. Grease.
Yes.
Patrick.
Grease.
Grease
Hey.
lightning.
Grease.
Doesn't
um,
doesn't yuck my yum. I'm just going by what I've seen in press releases.
yeah, I'm sure that when I fire up Neva here in the next day or two, I'm going to need that box of tissues across the room. But anyway, just games that really like connect, that I felt like connection to, that weren't exactly about like your main character has depression and therefore this is how you're going to connect to it. So with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom both, I really appreciate that the entire like central theme that's kind of under, or the undercurrent, however you want to explain it, that Link has failed.
Yeah.
Like you go, especially like that. I remember being like, damn, like in Breath of the Wild, because you go into like the Zora and there's such like a I forget what the word is, but they have like long lifespans. And so there are these people who for the past 100 years have been holding this like grudge against you because they feel that they blame you for Mifa's death 100 years ago. And they're like reminding you of it. Like, you shouldn't even be here. Like, how could you let this happen to our beloved, princess? And it's like, okay. So that makes you feel good. But alongside that, though, is that as the holder of the Triforce of Courage, is that would like imply he doesn't give up, though. Like, one of the first things that happens in Tears of the Kingdom is he tries to catch Zelda as she falls and he misses. It doesn't work. And then like everything else that happens in that game is because, or partially at least, because he couldn't save her in that moment. So those are some games that I've really felt connections to. And in Breath of the Wild, there also was literally like an overt, like if you went and found Princess Zelda's diary, she talks about like lashing out against him and like because she was going through some depression. And then like, and I appreciated that as well, because that's something that, if you're not really familiar with those feelings yourself or from someone that's close to you, then a lot of what you see in like Hollywood and stuff is just, oh, so depression is cannot get out of bed. Depression is will not stop crying for 24 hours straight, when really it can manifest in a lot of other ways, like being short-tempered or just otherwise not those like stereotypical scenes that you would see. So to have her in the flashbacks being really, kind of antagonistic against him, and then seeing her journal or her diary saying that about her own thought process was really cool to, because 2017 when that came out, that was like a couple years after I had started going through some of that stuff, and so that was really cool to see played out in one of my longtime favorite franchises.
Hell yeah.
And another one that I definitely want to call out before I kick it to somebody else is, again, maybe not ones you would think of off the top of your head, but Tales of Arise, because Cayman knows this. I'm not. Cayman, you can take a nap for the next few minutes if you want to, but because you know all this, you're good. But one of the main characters, Shion, voiced by the GOAT, Erica Lindbeck, also Black Cat, right? Yeah, Black Cat in Spider-Man. But anyway, her whole thing is that there's some sort of thing that she doesn't understand that she's had for her entire life, that if someone tries to touch her, it like basically like shocks them. It's called like her thorns, where like this like magical thing like actually like lash out and hurt people that try to get like physically close to her. But the main player character of Alphen, his whole thing for a while is that he can't feel pain. And so they start to kind of get close to each other, but then I won't spoil like every single plot point, but at one point, kind of like, I don't know if it's like the midpoint or the third of the way point, whatever, something happens to Alphen to where he can feel pain again, and he doesn't know that that's about to happen, and he tries to reach out and save Shion from being like taken by one of the bad guys, and he like touches her hand, and he like just like yelps and like just kind of like flies back in pain, and like you can just see on her like the animation's amazing, where she's just like absolutely devastated, like the one person that she felt like she could rely on or whatever now is also feeling that same pain from being close to her. And so there is this just, again, Tales of Arise does the same kind of thing that a lot of the, Bandai Namco, I don't know if I should say that name today after the news story, and other similar games have, where, a lot of the cutscenes will be in engine, but there's a fair number that are also, kind of anime rendered, hand drawn, whatever they are. And there's just when they go to rescue her from her captor, there's like just this literal, it's like wall of thorns that are up all around her, and he's just like no care in the world to how much it hurts him, like clawing through it to get back to her, like to save her. And I'm like, oh my god, dude, like that, like if that wasn't an intentional metaphor for like depression or mental illness or something, then I don't know what would be.
Sure.
God, it hits so hard.
Can we get that Yelp one more time?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Anything else I can perform for you while we're
I think that's all I need. Cayman, Kayla.
No, I mean,
I don't have any Les Mis in my pocket like you do. So
Yeah, we'll be in touch. You'll hear from us soon.
I mean, I could do one more Yelp if you can. Okay, I'll take it. That was a little half-assed, but I'll take it.
Sorry,
You're better.
man.
But anyways.
Cayman, how about you, man? As far as things that representation wise, whether you felt a connection to it because of how it related to you yourself, or just otherwise just felt that was a good representation of struggles.
Yeah,
physical struggles.
it's interesting you pointed out Spider-Man. And I think Spider-Man Miles Morales has like a really impactful moment towards the end where he's, spoiler alert, he's trying to save his friend who you find out is the big villain in the movie. And he doesn't. Like, he fails at the end. And his best friend dies. The community around him, his mother, his friends, like uplift him, like bring him back. Like, look, you can't do everything. And I think that's something that like really hit home for me, is this like idea that like at the end of the day, I'm going to fail constantly. I'm going to fail in my marriage. I'm going to fail in my friendships. I'm going to fail at my job. Like, these are just things that are natural courses of life. Like, it's not always going to be sunshine or roses.
Sure.
So it's like, lean on the people around you. Like, understand that like the real strength isn't like what you can do. Like, sure, we in the real world, we can't shoot spider webs out of our wrists. But like, the strength at the end of the game, I feel like the big overarching theme is not that Miles is strong because he's got these superpowers. He's strong because he's got this support system around him. He has all of these people that are like building him up and like, pulling him. And the strength that he has is like that internal, that fight to continue. And I just think it's like it was a very interesting way to end a game in which you are expecting, because he's a superhero, you're expecting him to win. And you're like, the truth is, like I said, you're not always going to win. There's going to be times in the most important parts of your life you will fall short. But like, how you move on next is what's important. And like, I have to remind myself of that all the time, that like, there's going to be times where, man, I'm just going to fuck everything up around me. Just like it is, right? There's going to be days where I'm not going to leave the bed because I both maybe physically can't or just emotionally can't. Like, that happens. That is a normal day in the life of the dumpster boy.
Yeah.
Like, what do I do tomorrow is what's the most important step next. If I continue to lay in bed, I continue to wallow or continue to like let these things eat me alive, then like, I'm not going to be Spider-Man. Spider-Man doesn't do that.
Sure.
Spider-Man learns how to take that next step forward. And we see that, I think, in Spider-Man 2, that like Miles has taken like what he's learned about failing, and he sees that same situation happening with Pete. Like, Pete's got the black suit on and he's going down a course and a path. And Miles is like, look, I've seen this before. Like, I fucked up before, I failed before, I'm not going to do it again. And like, I think that like crossover, like, that's a story that, well, yeah, we might be able to get some of that. Like, I mean, as shitty as the movie is, Amazing Spider-Man has like a really cool scene where he's like, where all the New Yorkers come out and they're like, dude, that scene's fucking badass. Okay. Rest of the movie's dog shit. But
all the cranes
all the cranes on the swing. If you didn't tear up during that scene during Amazing Spider-Man, you have no soul. Okay. You have no soul. But like, I don't think you can convey like that level of like storytelling and something like that, where I think like video games you can. And I think that like the Spider-Man series so far, we've got 3 games in. think he's done a bang up job on like being able to deliver those beats and like really resonate with people like myself.
Yeah,
Good.
and like
Good stuff, brother.
it also be, again, I won't spoil like specifics, but you know, Tales of Arise does have that classic JRPG thing of like, you know, friendship kind of helps save the day to an extent. Like, but again, to that same point of, you know, as strong as they may be individually with whatever their talents are, like what really saves the day is uniting and like, you know, coming together and like not letting one of the people, you know, fall to the wayside, even if it would be easier to let them, or, you know, whatever else, like being sure to keep lifting each other up and to let those connections, you know, make you stronger rather than, you know, be a weakness or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah. Patrick,
Jordan,
what you got?
I feel like some of them that I wanted to talk about have already been mentioned. So for the sake of time, I'm going to mention a different game that I'm kind of coming up with off the top of the dome, and that's Disco Elysium. This is a game
Okay.
that, for those of you that haven't played Disco Elysium, it is a game where you wake up one day as this detective, and all of your memories are gone because you have essentially drunken yourself into like complete oblivion, and you've lost basically all of your memories. And so, as the protagonist, you're tasked with trying to solve this mystery, but all of these like voices in your head are like kind of getting in your way, and you're also trying to remember like who you are, where you are, what's happening. Like all these people keep interacting with you, like your partner on the force, and like have these expectations of you as the protagonist, but you just like can't do them because you're so fucked up essentially. And I feel like that game for me, as someone who doesn't have as much of the mental as the physical, like I was talking about. Not that I don't have any, but that was one of those times where like hearing all of the different voices in this guy's head, and then like reading about the game and like kind of like the thoughts behind the developers' heads of like what they were kind of going for. I was like, man, this is kind of like playing this character is like kind of showing me like what some people deal with that I've never kind of considered. And I think something that I just really like a lot about games, and I think it's the thing that brings me back to games so often, especially on the narrative side, as I so often say, like I usually prefer a narrative driven game. Something that games have that other mediums don't is that agency, that ability of like putting you actually in the shoes of the character you're controlling, and your choices meaning something more than just, you know, watching a movie, watching a show, whatever. So actually like experiencing those things, and like as the player being just like bombarded by all of these intrusive thoughts and all these different like parts of your brain and stuff was kind of like a really cool experience, for lack of a better word. Playing that game as, you know, someone who hasn't really ever experienced that kind of thing before.
Yeah,
so just shout out to Disco Elysium. If you've not played it, highly recommend playing it on the biggest screen you can, because the text in that game is just so small.
You just sold me on this game.
It's really fucking good. And Basic Fun in the chat says the voice acting in Disco is incredible. It's true.
Basic, thanks for coming in, man. That's my boy.
That's my submission.
Yeah, Kayla, what about you?
Well, I have a couple, but most of mine I love that it has naturally come up in conversation. A lot of ours also, there's a lot of similarities. I can't go without mentioning Life is Strange as just a franchise in general. Is very much like, I think there's a lot of things seen there. Like you have a lot of like PTSD represented, grief, depression, anxiety, all of the things. And I'm currently playing through them to prepare for Double Exposure that's about to come out in a few days. Or actually, I think it technically came out today.
I think today is the early access, maybe.
Yeah.
Like if you did the
Yeah, I didn't, so I won't be playing it until later. But I played several, and I'm currently playing Life is Strange 2, which is it. Man, these games are tough. That's all I'm gonna say. Especially this one. Like I do think that this one could benefit from, and maybe I don't think it has any trigger warnings beforehand, but this one is interesting. Life is Strange as a whole, like I really love choice-based narrative games because again, the autonomy that you have to control your gameplay, but it also kind of lends to the real life aspect of not necessarily knowing what your choices are going to be, like make outcome wise.
Sure.
Like this could really affect someone else and their journey, and it may seem like the right choice for me in the moment, but like for me playing it, I'll have the anxiety of like, how is this choice going to affect this other character within the game? And I think it kind of plays on that purposefully, like in some aspects, because it is very intentional about its representation. So I definitely wanted to pay homage to those games. Are also some of my favorite games. Like the first Life is Strange is so good, and a lot of the choices that you are forced to make are very like mentally impactful and like the thought process behind that. The other one that I wanted to mention, I don't know if any of you have played Venba.
What a game!
Absolutely incredible, and I did think it was worth mentioning. Like something that I have not experienced is immigrating into this country and having to deal with the emotional and mental taxing of that. And I think that was a situation where one of the reasons I'm really grateful for games is being able to experience stories that I would never personally experience in my real life. So I think that tells a really great story of the anxiety and the pressures of like just trying to make it in this place that you feel like a fish out of water, and the impacts that it has on the family. Like it's also it's a short game. You should definitely play it if you don't know what it's about. It is about a family immigrating from India into Canada. I think it takes place in like the 80s. And it's a cooking game. So I think it's a tearjerker too. Like you are working through this, like you'll take a recipe from like a cookbook from, I think it's her mother. And you're doing the cooking in the game and telling stories to your child and seeing how like the generational trauma also is passed through like amongst the generations. Like very, very good game. It's short, it's on Game Pass, you should play it. And then lastly, before I end, I wanted to mention also What Remains of Edith Finch is also really good. It is very much just like a narrative like walkthrough type game, also on Game Pass, that I couldn't recommend more. But you're walking through your family's house, and each room kind of tells their story and how they died. So I think it does a lot of good things with like grief and depression and processing. I think it's a really good example of like mentally processing like your trauma and what you've been through. So that's my picks.
Good call.
Nice, yeah,
100% on. I agreed to the last one is such a fucking oi. That one kicks. that was a gut punch every time.
Yeah, but it's good.
Yeah, I've heard tell. I have not played through it myself, but I've heard it is a strong one. But you know, Kayla, was there anything that I know one of the other things that we had talked about discussing tonight was things that we may like to see in games. Was there anything that came to mind as far as things that maybe you haven't experienced in a game yourself, or that you have looked around and haven't been able to find, as far as portraying mental health or walking players through that kind of a journey?
Yeah, I think that I honestly, when I was thinking through games and like what that represents to me, I think we thankfully, like not saying there should be less of this, but I think there are a lot of good examples of games that portray depression and anxiety in a really impactful way. I haven't seen or haven't played a lot of games that really represent I would say like autism and ADHD necessarily. Either one of those things. And I think that could lend more to being in the industry as like either just being a part of your main character or being a central focus or something that you're dealing with. I think that we could definitely have some more room for that.
Yeah.
If you guys have any in the chat, any recommendations, definitely drop them. I'd love to play them. But
if there was ever a
that
question,
sure.
If there's ever a question tonight that the chat should pop off on, it's this one, because
yeah,
I have a feeling that whenever I get to mine, that like maybe there will be one that I just didn't know about. But Patrick, what about you?
So I think something that is missing in so many ways with gaming is the experience of women, and a lot of that has to do, I think, with historically there's more men in games, and for all sorts of reasons, and I think there's just so many things about that experience that especially men don't understand, but I also, and like things like postpartum and things like the experience of like having a child, or just like also not even like mother related, just like generally the experience of being a woman, I think is something that a lot of people that play video games could use some insight on.
Yes.
And so I
Yes, they
think
could.
that is something that I would love to see, because like going back to Venba, like that, man, what a way, like what a great way to put yourself in somebody else's shoes.
Yeah.
And like that was one of those games for me. I'm so glad that you brought that one up, of like, man, I want to find more games like this where like it puts
Mhm.
me in the shoes of somebody who's had such a drastically different experience from my own life.
Yeah.
And as you can probably tell, I am a man, and so I
Oh.
don't know what it's like being a woman. So I would love, and because I
Let
often,
me tell you, I'm just kidding.
right, thank you. No, I often, in games where I can create a character, I usually have the character be a woman if I can.
Yeah.
Just as like I just think it's things like Dragon Age Inquisition, where you're having lots of choice and things like that. I just we don't get to see it enough, so I like putting that kind of at the forefront when I can. So yeah, I would love to see more of that in games. That's my answer.
I do that pretty often too with like create a character situations. Like I'll name it after my wife or name it after Senua or something.
There you
just
go.
like- I said it. I'll name her.
There you go.
I mean the
Wow.
character.
Pronouns.
There you go.
How about you, Cayman?
So I'm gonna say this is gonna be kind of an interesting one. I don't necessarily say like it's games themselves, but maybe the community at large.
Okay.
It's and I'm gonna say this, and this might come across weird, but like DEI, like Patrick and I are part of DEI. Like it's two people who are legally disabled. Like we're part of that group. So when you sit there and you think that it's just people who look different than me or have different sexual organs than I do, that's DEI. Motherfucker, that's two people that look exactly like you.
Yeah.
And when you talk shit about DEI, or you talk shit about Sweet Baby, or the fact that there's people whose sole jobs are is to make sure that voices are being recognized inside of this medium, it's not just impacting the people you think are different than you.
Right.
It's impacting the people that you don't realize are just like you as well. That being said, fuck you for saying shit about those people that aren't like you too.
For sure.
You need to grow the fuck up. And I think the gaming community needs to really take a hard look at the mirror and like really realize that like this is, like I said, a community. And there's not going to be people that are just like you. And, whether I have, severe anxiety, or Patrick has, depression, or Kayla has ADHD, or Jordan's just a beautiful boy. Like,
Aw.
it doesn't fucking matter. Like, we are all in this fight together.
Yeah.
And I think attacking these marginalized communities, even if you're saying, some people are going to say, well, it's against my religion, or it's this, whatever. It's like, okay, but when you attack these marginalized communities, you're also attacking that person sitting right next to you.
Yeah.
The person you don't realize that next to you is hoping that maybe we do get some inclusion, and maybe they do have a voice, and they talk about, we get a character that has OCD, and like their struggles on like what they go through. Like you don't realize that your neighbor might have that, and they look exactly like you. Like when you attack these people, you're attacking those people too. So maybe take a step back, look in the mirror, do some research, do some investigating yourself, and then support and uplift not only just your neighbors, but the people in the industry who are doing the hard work to make games that include all walks of life.
Yeah.
For
I
sure.
agree. Yeah. There's
Awesome.
something that I
Very
think
well said.
a lot of people don't recognize is how much of this shit is invisible, and like that
Oh,
you
yeah.
would never know, what the person next to you has or deals with or whatever. And yeah, I agree with everything you said, Kim.
Which is
One
why
of
you
the,
should also talk about it too.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and like
Yes.
why I'm glad we're able to do this right now. Sorry, Jordan, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine.
I got
I love that
passionate.
point.
But yeah, I think like also like Cayman said, like a lot of what we deal with on a personal level, and sometimes it's not the right time to talk about it. Maybe it's something that
Mhm.
like you need some time to internally process. But I think like using your voice is so important, especially when it is like something that we all deal with. Like all of us have brains. All of us like have um, you know, mental thought patterns and like things that bother us and things that are, you know, an actual disease, like
Mhm.
mentally
Yes.
and physically. And your brain, when you're depressed, looks marginally different than your brain when it's not. Like it's completely different. That's a whole other like scientific soapbox. We could
Yeah.
go on.
But
Yeah, we should
100% true though.
definitely discuss it. And
Yeah.
talk about it.
100%.
Essential.
And like, going off what Cayman was talking about, like I'm gonna speak to this on the mental health side, but it goes with physical disability as well. Like I for a couple years I worked at the local like acute inpatient facility for psych and for substance use. And so I was one of the intake people, like doing the intake interviews to
Wow.
see what was going on. Very hard job.
Yeah, God.
Clearly did not keep that as a career because I it was making my own mental health worse.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
because it's just so hard to take care of yourself and take that on from other people too,
Mhm.
and all that. But one of the things that one of my like supervisors had said, many times to people who were coming through, like especially if they were maybe like nursing students on a rotation or something like that, is like we all want to think that like, oh, I can't believe like these people are doing those kind of things, or like oh gosh, this is just so like so other, so out there. Like we are all one bad day away from being in a place like that.
Yeah.
Sure.
We're all one bad day away from needing to be on a disability leave or
Mhm.
receive disability from the government because of an accident, or just life just
Yeah,
happens.
or your
So
DNA decides it's time to unlock the thing.
yep.
Enter
And
lock.
yes, and instead of being able to charge a playing card, I just got charge my credit card to a therapist instead. So
Yeah.
There you go.
Speaking of that, though, what I kind of jotted down for things that I would personally like to see, and again, please, if there is a game that you all know of that fits this criteria, in the chat or in the squares on my screen, rectangles. Let me know. But something that I would like to see more of for games is therapy, and therapy that is that doesn't have like a twist associated with it.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
because I feel like you see that a lot. I've seen some good depictions of like therapy type of situations and media, like TV shows or movies or whatever. But there's still a lot out there in that realm, and as well as in video games, where like even if there is like you think it's like a good representation of like the therapist to client relationship or just therapy in general, like there's got to be some twist to it, like oh, she sleeps with all her clients, or like oh, she like this guy's actually a murderer and he's just trying to find his next victim. Like one of the games that came to mind was Katana Zero, which I still love. Like this is not like something like, oh, this ruined the experience for me, because it's an awesome little indie game. Check it out if you haven't. But like there is like you go and see it like a therapist pretty much like before every mission. But the therapist's main like role in that story is just to make sure, like just keep tabs on how this like time altering drug is affecting the protagonist.
Mhm.
And sorry, spoiler alert for like a 6-7-year-old indie game. Like the therapist himself is actually like a secret boss that you can like if you answer the questions in a certain way throughout the story, it's actually like a boss fight, because he's like some evil entity. So it's like
I actually kind of love that.
but it's
But
not
I
like
get it, yeah.
not like using a clipboard. I think he like
Not really IRL.
yeah, he does. I think he like transforms into something that you have to fight or something. But either way, it's like, again, even if part of it actually does sound pretty legit on paper, as far as the questions that he's asking you that you're answering and things like that, like it still ends up being some like gotcha at the end. And so I think it'd be cool to like actually see like a therapist relationship in a video game that plays out like an actual reasonable, healthy relationship that somebody
Sure.
has for like as a
Yeah,
professional.
that's one of those
Um,
things where like because the art form and the medium is just still so young in the
Mhm.
grand scheme, like there's you compare it to books, you compare it to movies, like there's just so many more of those things, right? So I
Yeah.
think we'll get there.
So to
sure.
Jordan, a couple things therapist wise, I want to say Until Dawn has like segments of Until Dawn that's therapy, and then
Sure.
almost the entirety of Shattered Memories, Silent Hill's
Ooh.
Shattered Memories, is it's told through the perspective of therapy. So your character is in therapy, and they actually like adjust gameplay based on your answers that you
Ooh.
give.
Ooh,
Like,
I'm putting
so
this in my.
it'll ask you, like, it'll be like, oh, like it'll talk about certain things. It's like, oh well, yeah, I'm scared of these things, like these things give me anxiety. Then like they will adjust that to be like included. It's not done, I don't think it's done in a way that's like revolutionized the way gaming works, because I think it's only been done once, but it's a really cool concept, and I think you would dig it. I definitely say but you would have to play it on PC, because I don't think you want to bust out a Wii to play Shattered Memories. So
Listen, you don't know what's on a
there's got to
shelf.
be an
Okay? There's a Wii.
emulation. There's got to be an emulation of it. I'm just saying it'd be the
Yeah.
easier way to play it.
Mhm.
But I don't disagree, though. I do think it's a really cool concept that I think,
Yeah.
if done well, could be like super fucking cool. Love
Yeah.
to see it.
For sure, because other games that we'd mentioned earlier too, like Celeste and Night in the Woods, like they will have like like the protagonist will mention therapy in a positive light, which is still very good to have those kind of things in the games. But I don't know, yeah, like I was saying, there's just something about doesn't have to be an actual 45-minute to an hour segment of the game, but just like some sort of thing where you're like sitting in an office and
No,
like
I
the
agree.
therapist, I think that'd be a cool shift to see.
I was Googling games where you like that have therapy in them just to see if like anything else comes up. And someone is trying to make the argument that The Sims, you are the role of a therapist and controlling these people. Like, grow up.
I don't know if that's true.
Certainly not true. That is such a fucking stretch.
That is, I think that's beyond a stretch. But
Yeah.
Game Over Trillo in the chat had a good point that I think we were talking about earlier. Love me some Souls game. Just stay away from the fandoms. Those still get angry if I or anyone asks for an easy toggle for people with disabilities or no time to sync on them.
Right.
Yeah. Circling back to that for sure. I think
let
like
people play games how they want to play games.
exactly. And like I do think like I know one thing we will probably end up talking about is like content or trigger warnings, like that I think are super important. I do think that I have seen games too where like there are options to have like less gore or less like depictions of certain things, like I think that like that is so I think we could see more of that, honestly.
Yes, for sure.
And like I think that we are very young in the timeline of like content warnings and trigger warnings in media.
Yeah.
I think there definitely is a lot of room for improvement on that. I definitely have seen it, but I think there's people that want to enjoy video games that maybe there are some limitations that they have when it comes to content like that. And I would love for that to be more available for people in future space.
Yeah. I remember Alan Wake 2 put in the patch where you could actually like tone down the flashing the jump scares basically.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't do it until after I finished, rolled credits. So thanks.
You son of a bitch.
But no, I mean that's actually like a perfect because like the I don't know how much time everybody has tonight, but that was the last thing that I kind of jotted down was just just thoughts on the state of the industry when it comes to things like representation, when it comes to things like accessibility options, whether that means a lower difficulty setting or it means adjustable settings for folks who have variations of blindness or variations of being hard of hearing, things like that. So if we have time to jump into that, great. If we need to call, then
I got time.
I'm here.
Have you guys okay, hold on. Have you guys seen I've noticed a trend lately, and it's been more so with like smaller games. But have you noticed like part of the accessibility options being instead of it being a difficulty being like easy, normal, hard, it's just a scale. So you can adjust the scale like depending and one of I think a really good implementation is a little indie game called Dodgeball Academia.
Oh yeah.
And Dodgeball Academia actually gives you a scale in which you can go in both directions to be like, hey, I have bad reflexes, so I can't defend. Like I can't play defense as well because I can't. So I'm going to move this down. However, I'm going to adjust how much damage I do because I'm doing too much. So I'm going to do it where I do less damage, but I also take less damage because that's just not good. And it's like, I love the idea of like implementing that where instead of it being a traditional, like easy, normal, hard, because so many times it's like normal's too easy, but hard is too hard.
Mhm.
Give me the ability to scale like where I am. Like I think with Souls games, it's like totally cool with the amount of damage I do. I'm totally fine with. But can we just adjust a little bit to give me that parry window just to be a little bit bigger? Because I struggle with reflexes and being able to parry is really difficult for me right now.
Yeah.
And so, like, can I just adjust that to give me just a little bit more room so that I'm not just like, well, fuck, I can't parry at all. So I'm going to have to completely avoid an entire mechanic
Mhm.
of this game. Like, can we just adjust it slightly?
I was going to quickly say I've been noticing that more in games where it's like or not even like a scale, but like it has 6 or 7 different difficulty options. There's like a combat difficulty option. There's a resources difficulty option. You can kind of control. Okay, well, I want the combat to be harder, but I also like let's scale this other thing back. I love that kind of like piecemeal difficulty.
Silent Hill 2, you can toggle to make the like everything harder or easier. Even puzzles, you can make them harder or easier, which I think is really smart too. Like, let's be honest, I'm a stupid piece of shit. I don't understand. I'm really bad at puzzle games. So instead of me having to use a guide, because then I feel like I'm cheating if I'm using a guide, just let me make the puzzles a little easier. A little baby boy. I don't understand it.
I've got a game for you then, Cayman.
Oh yeah,
it's a little indie called 9 Souls.
Oh, fuck off! Isn't 9 Souls like brutally difficult game?
I'm telling you, from the very beginning, it does that. I will say it's kind of annoying that it does.
Whoa, Game Over Cholo brought it up right as you brought it up. How weird is that?
Cholo, nice man, nice. It does that annoying thing where if you do toggle on the easier difficulty, then it disables some of the achievements, which that's kind of that's another conversation for another time.
Yeah,
but it does. I had to do that at a certain point, like 3/4 the way through the game, because I was like, I'm loving the story, the vibe is immaculate, but I am not beating this boss. I'm just not. And so but it had the thing where there's like there's at least 2 where you could adjust how much damage you take and how much damage you output. And I think that it may have also had settings for parry windows and things like that. So, I know you thought I was just trying to get one over on you, but no, I was trying to give you an actual example. And another one, Patrick, I don't know if you even got this far in Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown to notice this, but they have like 14 things you can adjust along those same lines as far as like
that's really cool.
And Steve Saylor, the blind gamer, he's put pretty highly of some of their accessibility options for how to highlight protagonists versus the enemies in the game, and like the parry windows and things like that. I'm pretty sure there was some room for improvement as well, but especially compared to other games that are out there these days, was at least moving in the right direction when it came to that sort of thing. So, yeah.
I thought it was cool that I actually didn't know this, and I don't really play Call of Duty anymore, but I used to be a big fan. T. Thomas in the chat said, you can skip a whole level in one of the Call of Duty games. That's pretty cool.
Actually, that was Modern Warfare 1 or 2.
Was it the Russian thing?
Yeah, it's a level where like you're in an airport and you just like kill a bunch of civilians. So they're like, if you don't want to do that, you can.
I think that's. I mean, I do wish more games did that. I think that's actually.
I agree. Yeah,
makes a lot of sense, especially for games. Like
I brought that. I put that in my notes as far as you mentioned trigger warnings earlier. Both of the Hellblade games are very overt and being like, this we are trying to depict psychosis, and some people may find this very uncomfortable. So take care of yourself, kind of thing. Shout out to Ninja Theory for like. I mean, you want to talk about doing the research. I mean, they worked alongside like mental health professionals. They worked alongside entire groups of people who experience psychosis in their daily lives to be like trying to make it as accurate and true to life as possible. So shout out to them. But the second game, it also like, again, this is, I'm only spoiling as far as the main menu is concerned, but it tells you like there are depictions of psychosis. There is obviously violence because you're fighting off these enemies, and it also deals with topics of like infant death, and so like and that is one of the most memorable like sequences from that game was one that dealt with that, and the fact that they had the foresight to put that in the front was very courteous. I think I'm lucky and blessed that I have not dealt with that.
Sure.
I know plenty of folks who did go through infant loss as far as like miscarriages or things like that. So can be very, very tough. And that's a lot more common than people probably realize. So shout out again to them for thinking.
Yeah. And ahead. I don't remember if they do it in the game, but also if that is something that would impact an experience of a game, What Remains of Edith Finch, trigger warning for that game.
Yeah, that too. I don't remember if they'd have that before.
I can't remember either.
I feel like they probably do.
They probably.
I don't remember. It's been a little while since I played it, but yeah, I think that's something that like I'm really like I don't know if proud of is the right word, but I'm excited that's the direction we're moving in, where that's more like acceptable to put that in the games and before the games, and like have that be a part of the conversation, to where it's not just like a situation where you're playing a game and there's something like you were not prepared for, and in like a very way that could potentially be dangerous for people. So I'm glad that that's something that's being more introduced into games and like really just media in general. Like I can say like in the past, like I mean, really, even in like the past 5 years, even like it's something like if you would have mentioned that being the case 5-10 years ago, they'd be like, "What the heck are you talking about?" Like, it's not like it's something like I feel like fairly new as far as like a regularity standpoint. So that's pretty cool.
And I know that I've mentioned The Magicians to Kayla a couple times.
Yes.
Because of the books and the show dealing with some pretty heavy stuff as far as mental health is concerned, and largely, at least in my opinion, doing it pretty well. But there were some things that they probably could have handled a little bit better as far as letting people know things ahead of time before episodes as opposed to only after. But I still do want to give credit where it's due that like they would, if there was an episode that dealt with somebody having suicidal thoughts or sexual assault or something that happening within the episode, then like at the very least they would have something at like the opposite of a title card. Yeah, it's like right before the credits where it's like a several seconds of like if you are dealing with this, please here's a resource or 2 or 3 or whatever. So you love to see that kind of thing.
We do.
Being done more often.
Love to see it. Absolutely.
Well, I feel like we're at the natural conclusion. Is there anything else on our minds about mental health and video games we want to talk about before we go our separate ways?
I'm just getting started. So what? I'm just kidding. No,
I got another hour into me.
Well, thanks, y'all. And Jordan, thank you for bringing the topic to the table and leading and guiding the conversation. I think, as Kayla was saying earlier, I think this is something that we should all talk about more. And I'm glad that we took the time to do it. And I'm glad that we had such a great pop in chat today. Shout out to everybody that's in the chat. Always love when y'all are in the chat, being part of the conversation. So thanks for being here. We will be back next week with another episode of the podcast. But before then, we'll deal with the future later. Let's deal with the present now. Jordan, Kayla, thanks for being here. Jordan, where can the folks at home follow you if they want to get more of that sweet Cognitive Clips content?
More coggy boy. Thank you all again. Like I said, I really appreciate y'all, kind of let me take the reins a bit more than normal, and just joining in the conversation, because this was fantastic. I can't fathom it being any more productive or great of a conversation than it actually was. So if you want more of me, you can find me at Cognitive Clips over on Threads and Instagram. You can look at wordpress.com/antidepressant or so, whatever it is. I don't even know anymore. Again, I don't even keep it up anymore, but it's there. You can read that. And of course on YouTube at Cognitive Clips as well. So
amazing.
Hell yeah. Kayla, where can the folks at home follow you?
Well, you can follow me on JK Games Podcast, where we'll be playing some spooky games sometime soon in the near future. I hope to do more content discussing mental health because it is something like, again, I'm very thankful that Jordan brought that to the forefront and led the conversation with that because it's something I'm really passionate about too. So JK Games Podcast on pretty much everything. You can also follow me if you're interested in bookish type things at Palettes and Pages on Instagram.
Hell yeah. Cayman, how about you, buddy?
All right. So I'm going to take a brief pause here for a second. I want to throw one last thing into the mix.
Yeah.
So for everyone at home on a more micro level, I know we've been talking about macro stuff here, but on a more micro level, give yourself some grace. Give your friends some grace. Look, the world's tough, and you know it's a hard place to navigate. Surround yourself with people like we have here. Find yourself a community that will uplift you. And, you know, like I said, just take every day as you do. Remember, tomorrow is another chance to do something better. That being said, you can follow me at Twitter at the Dumpster Boy. And fuck it, maybe one day Save Trash Cinema will come back as well.
It will. It will. When the time is right, it will.
But if
That
you
was,
want to go see a bunch of back episodes, there are a shit ton still posted out there. So you can go find that at Save Trash Cinema, literally everywhere. There's like 50 plus episodes still floating around. So go enjoy them.
One of my favorite things about you, Cayman, first of all, that was beautifully said, and I could not agree more. I just love the harsh juxtaposition between find yourself a community that loves and uplifts you. You can follow me at the Dumpster Boy on Twitter.
It's very good.
The name.
We believe in nothing but hard cuts here.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Do not be fooled by his moniker. He is a sweet boy. So.
Aww.
Well, thanks everybody for being here. You can follow me at Pshwussy, or you can follow the pod at Spot Games Pod or Spotlight Games Pod. Everywhere that's not Twitter. Spot Games Pod is Twitter. Everywhere else is Spotlight Games Pod. That's right here on Twitch. That's YouTube. That's Twitter. Nope. God damn it, Patrick. Figure it out. Instagram, TikTok. Just whatever. Figure it out. You're smart people. We're gonna go raid Jake Twitchin, who is streaming some Life is Strange double exposure.
Speaking of,
so stick around.
There we go.
We're gonna start the raid now, and I think once I start raid, I end the stream, and I guess we'll all go there. So lock in. Let's go show Jake Twitchin some love. Give him a follow. Maybe if you're feeling naughty, give him a subscription. But thanks for being here. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.